Couch Cows, where today we are going to be recapping the championship games that just happened and I guess doing a little preview of the Super Bowl. The game just ended about the Seahawks Rams game just ended about 20 minutes or so as I'm recording this video. But we'll get to that game second. We'll talk about the first game that happened, the AFC Championship game between the Patriots and the Broncos. Not necessarily the most exciting game. I'll say that for to start. Um, and obviously, it was the weather. The weather played a huge factor in this game. It's kind of crazy how you look at the beginning of the game to by the fourth quarter and the difference. It was clear. There was nothing on the ground, and then it was completely covered in snow. They even had to digitally um, put the yardage markers on the screen, but eventually they couldn't even do that. There was so much snow. So the elements, the weather, definitely played a huge, huge factor in this game. I mean, I think the teams combined for, they combined for less than 400 yards of offense. Both teams entirely. Less than 400 yards of offense. Drake May only threw for 86 yards. Stidham had 130. And I think the biggest difference in this game, and I think it was a big difference in the Seahawks Rams game, which we'll get into, and I think it's also been a big difference in the entire playoffs. It's that these teams are just refusing to take their points. The Broncos were up, I think it was 7-7. I'm not mistaken. It could have been 10, it could have been 7-0, but I'm pretty sure it was 7-7. And the Broncos don't kick their field goal. They go for it. They don't get it. It might have been 7-0. Let me see if I can figure out when this was. It was 7-0. And they turn it over on 4th and 1 from their own 14-yard line. So you're up, you're winning in the game. It's 7-0, and they don't take their field goal. They go for it on 4th, and they don't get it. And that ended up being the difference in the game. The Patriots ended up winning by 3. It would have likely gone to overtime. Now, I don't think the Broncos would have won in overtime, but with the weather how it was, you never really know. Certain thing just goes your ways, and you can win a game, in any situation. But it wasn't tied. They were down 3. They couldn't get in field goal range. Jarrett Stidham throws the pick to Christian Gonzalez. But the game, honestly, for Stidham, when the weather didn't completely take over, he had that first drive, the great ball to Marvin Mims, and then he had the well schemed up touchdown to Cortland Sutton in the corner of the end zone. That drive started off great, and I thought he did have some bad moments, like he missed the screen pass. He had the fumble where he tried to like shovel it after going backwards for a handful of yards. And definitely some missed throws here and there, but I thought before the weather got really bad, he actually didn't play too bad of a game considering he hasn't played in a while. It was against a very good defense in the Patriots playoff game. I didn't think he played horrible. And then the weather came in, and obviously no quarterback did anything. Even without the weather, Drake May ended up with the game with 86 yards. He almost had more rushing yards than he did passing yards. And if you take in net passing yards, he had the same amount of net passing yards as he did rushing yards. And I think that Patriots offensive line is going to be a big issue here in the Super Bowl against that Seahawks front. It was an issue against Houston. It was an issue against Denver. And now it could be an issue against Seattle. But we'll get into that when we do a little preview of the Super Bowl. I mean, the ground game, Ramondre Stevenson had a solid game, but not really an efficient game. Just got his numbers up because they had to give him the ball so many times because he couldn't throw it. Again, Drake May's legs were a huge factor in this game, and they have been. And that's another thing that's been a good factor because when the pressure gets to Drake May because they don't have the best O line and they're going against very good D lines, Drake May is able to run, create some plays. He had that big play at the end of the half. Now, they didn't end up making the kick, but he had that big, he had the 28-yard run to give them even a chance to get 3 points at the end of half. They called a timeout with 1 second, but his legs were great again. He had a great game on the ground against the Chargers. I'm pretty sure he had a good game on the ground against Houston as well. So that's been a really big factor because they haven't really been able to get their ground game going amongst the running backs, but Drake May's been a huge factor. But again, nothing really happened in the pass game because they couldn't throw the ball at all. Denver's defense played really well, especially at the beginning of the game. They were playing amazing. And it all really just came down to, in my opinion, the Broncos not kicking the ball, not kicking their field goal on fourth down to go up 10-0. It stays a 7-0 game. Jarrett Stidham turns the ball over later on. The Patriots should have got the touchdown off the turnover. So, yeah, Drake May had a rushing touchdown, but in reality, New England should not have been on offense. They should have just gotten a defensive touchdown, but the refs blew the whistle dead or whatever. Drake May then runs it in. And that was the two difference makers in the game. Will Lutz wasn't able to get any of his 2 field goals in. Again, the conditions were just horrible. The fumble from Stidham that, again, should have been a touchdown, but it still ended up resulting in a touchdown. And then obviously the decision to go for it on 4th and 1 in the red zone. Where obviously the real difference in this game, when it's a 3-point game, you know it's going to be a defensive-heavy game. You know the weather could eventually be a factor like it was. I feel like points were just not going to be easy in this game, as you saw. And I feel like if you have any chance, especially with a backup quarterback, to just get points, you got to take your points. And I think that is the main reason why the Broncos ended up losing this game. Patriots, how confident are we with them going into the Super Bowl? I don't know. Drake May hasn't played the best this postseason, hasn't needed to necessarily because the defense has played so well. It's a Super Bowl caliber defense. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks when the Super Bowl is actually happening. But you can't put up 10 points against Seattle, but again, you're not going to be in the conditions that they were. They probably would have ended up. I mean, Denver's defense was playing well, so even without all the snow, I don't think the Patriots would have scored more than like 17, 20 points. And if you can't score 17 points against Seattle. So they have to play better on offense. They have to try and just do something to prevent that Seattle D-line because they've gone against great D-lines and it hasn't gone great for New England, but they do squeak out with a win over the Jarrett Stidham-led Broncos. Now going into the second game of the day, the much more exciting game in the NFC Championship between the Seahawks and the Rams. I mean, these two teams gave us 2 very close games in the regular season, and they delivered once again in the part 3, the trilogy of these two teams, another great game. First game between these two was a defensive-heavy game because they have 2 very good defenses, and then game 2 was a very offensive-heavy game because they also have 2 very good offenses. This was kind of in the middle, except for the 2 quarterbacks. Sam Darnold and Matthew Stafford played fantastic. Stafford, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. Darnold, 346, 3 touchdowns. JSN had 10 for 153 and 1. He was fantastic. Puka Nacua, 9 for 160 and 1. The 2 quarterbacks and the 2 receivers really showed out. And honestly, the 2 star running backs, I say star running backs, Kyron's the number 1, but Corum had a great game. Kenneth Walker had a good game. And I just want to give a ton of love to Sam Darnold. Very, very rough start to his career on the Jets, on the Panthers. Then he goes to Minnesota. He plays great. Has an amazing regular season, MVP candidate. Then they play the Lions in Week 18 of the regular season for the 1 seed, similar to the position he was this season when they played the Niners. And he does not play great against the Lions. They lose the 1 seed. They have to play at the Rams, even though the game wasn't actually in SoFi because I think like the wildfire stuff caused it to. I think they played in Arizona. I'm not sure. But they go play the Rams in the wild card. Also does not play great. And we start to wonder if Sam Darnold, yeah, he can actually be really good in the regular season with a good team around him, but can he get it done in the playoffs? And that first game against San Fran, he didn't really have to do anything, so it wasn't really a, oh, is Sam Darnold still just not a good playoff performer? Because he didn't have to do anything. The offense could have literally scored 0 points and they would have won because of Rashid Shaheed's kick return touchdown. However, he shut all of that up against a very good Rams defense and played the best game of his career, 25 for 36, super efficient, 346 yards. He's not even fully healthy. I don't think his oblique is as big of a deal as people are making it because he doesn't seem to be bothered by it really, but he can't be 100% healthy if they're talking about it. So, shout out big shout out to Sam Darnold for just the career turnaround he's had, and now he's playing in the Super Bowl with a chance to win the Super Bowl in his first ever start. But I think, again, as we talked about with the Patriots Broncos game, the big difference in that game was the Broncos not kicking the field goal up 7 and failing to convert the fourth down. It stayed a 7-0 game, and the Patriots ended up obviously winning 10-7. I feel like another big factor in this game was the Rams going for it on fourth down in near the end zone and failing to convert. Now on that drive, they went for it earlier and they miraculously got it off of Matthew Stafford's scramble where he broke the DeMarcus Lawrence sack attempt and then dove and got the first down. But then they got put in another fourth down and they go for it again, down 4. I think they should have taken their points because because at the end of that drive, on the very final drive, where they had like 25 seconds left they literally had to get to Matthew Stafford Hail Mary range. But if they would have kicked the field goal, it would have been a 1 point game, and they would have just needed a field goal to win instead of a touchdown. And if Seattle would have scored on the drive, they didn't end up doing that. But if they would have scored, it would have been 38-27. But if they would have made the field goal, it would have been 38-31. And that's if they scored a touchdown. So I think the Rams, just like the Broncos, should have taken their points. And that's been a thing with the Rams. I feel like they almost lost the Panther game because they didn't go for it. They went for it on fourth, didn't get it instead of taking their points. I don't think it was as bad of a decision for the Rams because the Broncos was very early in the game. It was going to be a low-scoring game more likely than not. The weather could have been an impact. But this game, it's high scoring. You're down 4, not a lot of time left. I understand where they were going with it. But I still think they should have taken their points, especially in a high-scoring game like that. But again, they don't get the fourth down. It goes to Seattle, and then there's the Cooper Kupp questionable first down. They don't use a challenge flag. Then there's the big completion to JSN on second and down. That was huge. Another just one of the great plays Darnold and JSN made this game. And then the nail in the coffin was the penalty on Kobe Durant. Got Seattle their first down. All they needed was one more to ice the game. They ended up icing the game, and they are now going to the Super Bowl. So once again, I think the biggest thing of these playoffs was teams not taking their points. You saw it so many different times. It feels like it's a guarantee that the teams are going to go for it at this point, and like no one takes their points. And I think it cost both the losers of these two championship games a chance at the Super Bowl. I get it a little bit more with the Rams, as I said before, but first the Broncos. The Broncos, I think, is a no-brainer. They should have kicked it. But I could see a little bit more of the Rams thinking in going for it. But I think you already miraculously got a fourth down conversion in the previous play, and now you're attempting to do it again. I don't know. I think they should have kicked it. But we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. Seahawks, Patriots. Once again, there's been a lot of really good defenses in this playoffs. But once again, we have another defensive heavy matchup between Seattle and New England. Two quarterbacks who have yet to be in the Super Bowl before. I think it will be interesting. A rematch of Super Bowl 49. One of the better Super Bowls for sure in my lifetime, I think, of all time. With the Malcolm Butler pick, just the game in general between Seattle, between Russ and Tom Brady. One of the better Super Bowls. So we get a rematch of that. I don't think it will be as high scoring, but who knows? This game was high scoring. Again, if the Patriots want to, I think the key for the Patriots, they can't let Seattle's D line get to them. Easier said than done, but Drake May needs time in the pocket, and they need to score a lot more points because although New England's defense is really good, I do think I can see a world where Sam Darnold plays really well against that New England defense. And if Sam Darnold and this Seahawks team can score about 24 points, I don't know if I see the Patriots matching that or beating that. So I think if the Patriots want to win, they got to keep it super low scoring. But if it gets to that high scoring range, I think I'm going to lean towards the Seahawks. But we'll just have to wait and see in 2 weeks when these two teams play in the Super Bowl. But I guess I'll see you guys next time when the Super Bowl's over. Peace.